Hey everyone, welcome to our LinkedIn Live event today. We're so excited that you've joined us as we discuss all things related to the mortgage lending industry with Sonja Bullard, who is our mortgage broker guest speaker today. We're so glad to have you with us. Welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Just a reminder that this session is being recorded. This recording is the exclusive property of Real Estate Closing Path. All video files and commentary shared during this session belong to RECP and may be used in future trainings or marketing promotions. Our intention is to represent you and RECP in the very best light. And if you're new here, just a little bit about who we are. Real Estate Closing Path is the third branch in a suite of organizations owned by a woman named Marianne Harris. She started in the industry over 20 years ago with a company called Positively Balanced, which provides third-party escrow account reconciliation services. And then in 2020, she launched Positively Closed, which provides remote closing support solutions. And then in 2021, Real Estate Closing Path was launched, and we are the training branch in all the different aspects of the closing process. We'll sometimes train people who are brand new to the industry, and we'll help them with job placement where we can. We also train people who are already placed, but they may need to fill in any knowledge gaps or do what we might call cross training. Maybe they've been a pre-closer and they're going to switch or add on post-closing, or they've been working in one industry software and they now need to learn another. So we can help and provide those different services. I encourage you, if you are new to Real Estate Closing Path, I invite you to follow us on any of the social media channels, wherever you hang out for your professional connections. We're on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram at Real Estate Closing Path. Here you can see a list of the different workshops that we currently offer. We have 9 different unique workshops. We can customize curriculum to fit your firm's needs. We can also offer any of these as lunch and learns. Usually our students are realtors or attorneys who might be new to real estate law, or they might be adding on real estate law to their practice, and then also their staff. And then we're super excited. In the last year, all of our workshops are GREC approved. That's the Georgia Real Estate Commission. So if anyone on your team is looking for their CE credits, we have a handful of our workshops that are also approved by the Georgia Bar. We're working on completing that list for this year. We're also CE and CLE approved in Florida for title agents and attorneys. And next we're looking at Texas and hope to continue to expand to other states as well. So that's been a big accomplishment for our team in the last year. I'm going to post one more link in the website. Again, if you want to check us out, that's who we are. My name is Janis Gaines. I'm the Executive Director here at Real Estate Closing Path. Most of my career has been spent in education. I have never been a closer, but I was brought on when we were a startup to help provide some structure around some curriculum development. I network with clients, sponsors, guest speakers, help with scheduling, onboarding clients, etc. That's who I am and what I do. And then I'm so excited to introduce Sonja Bullard today. And just full disclosure, she and I go way back. We grew up together and attended the same high school, and just our longtime friends. And again, it's an honor to have Sonja here. We actually both started as English teachers way back when. Sonja spent some time in Maine, in Sicily, then transitioned to working in the computer training industry until she found her way into the mortgage industry. She's currently working as the producing area manager for Acopia Home Loans with licenses in Georgia, Alabama, North Carolina, and Florida. As a consummate team player, Sonja leads a group of originators and support staff in North Atlanta. She partners with realtors to provide mortgage consulting to their clients, as well as marketing and social media to build realtor brands. A large part of her time involves working with local charities and organizations to support the communities served by Ecopia. And just to shout out a couple of the charities she's been linked with, that would include Habitat for Humanity, Big Brothers, Big Sisters, and then just even in her professional accomplishments, she's been part of the Ecopia Circle of Excellence for 4 years in a row, and the Ecopia Branch of the Year for the last 5 years in a row. So congratulations to Sonja and your team. That's really a huge success and accomplishment. And then just a personal shout out to her family, married to Jim Bullard with 5 grown children, and not to neglect the 6th child in the family, Fitz, the spoiled rotten dog, who I hear couldn't be with us today, but I know that
he's in timeout. He bit my finger last night in my sleep, so he's in timeout.
Yeah. Well, welcome, Sonja. Again, we're just thrilled to have you here today and can't wait to hear all that you have to share with us about your knowledge in the industry.
I'm so glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. All right, we're going to jump right in here. Can you just tell us a little bit about yourself? Anything I left out that you would want to add or say?
That's pretty much it. I lived on St. Simon's Island with my husband and my spoiled rotten dog. COVID allowed for us to be a little more flexible of where we're working. The digital world kind of exploded after that. So my husband's from Brunswick, and we knew we wanted to retire here. We both could work remotely. So now I go back and forth between South Georgia and Atlanta and work with the team both remotely and in person. So
that's nice. So it sounds like you get a little bit of the best of both worlds. You
yes.
Get a little big city life and a little, ocean
life.
That's right. Well,
not too far away.
That's great. So how did you become a mortgage broker? Like, how did you weave from English teacher into this industry?
So I had gotten into the adult training realm when school systems stopped hiring English teachers back in the 90s. And so I realized if you could sell Shakespeare to 7th graders, you could pretty much sell anything. So I sold computer training back when everybody was just learning to be end users. There was a huge need in 98, 99. So I went into outside account management for big companies, Coca-Cola, Georgia Pacific, Delta, and Atlanta. It was an Atlanta native's dream client list that was handed to me. So I did that. And then we saw one, I brought one of Lisa Kavanaugh, who we grew up with, me and you. She came to work with me because she had been in the mortgage industry and it kind of downturned. And then when the IT industry started on its downturn in 01, she said, you really need to come out and work with me in mortgages. You'd be really, really good at it. And I was like, I don't know how to do that. So anyway, so we worked at a broker and it just kind of took off from there. I love it. I love being a part of people's milestone moments. It just seems like people move and buy houses at different milestones in your life, in their life, and I get to be there. One of my very favorite things is to go to the closing table and sit there and watch people sign. That's the happiest. I have a lot of counterparts, and not at Ecopia, but other places that say, why do you go to the closing? It's done. And I said, well, it's kind of like running a marathon with your friends and family, and then right before you cross the finish line, you go, I'm out. I'm going back to get started. The starting line with somebody else, and that's just the time that the big celebration is. And it's a wonderful. It's a blessing to be able to be a part of that. So I love that.
I love that analogy of like a marathon and then crossing the finish line. That's so true. There's so much that goes on behind the scenes that even the buyers or sellers don't really know all that it takes to close that loan and make it happen. And you're right, it's a big moment when it's your job and you're handling these kind of transactions all the time. But for that couple or that family, it could be that once in a lifetime moment, or they're buying their dream home.
That's right.
And that's part of how real estate law became known as one of the happy laws. Right?
I've never heard that. That's awesome.
Oh, yeah. So we say adoption and real estate law are the happy laws.
Got it.
So yeah, all the others can be a little tricky. That's great. Great. What are some of the changes you've seen in the mortgage lending business in the last few years?
So interesting. I started in 01, 02, and back then everything was paper. You made a paper file, you
Okay.
stacked it, you made a copy, you sent
Yep.
it out. You paid for an appraisal, and the appraiser did the appraisal, printed out 3 copies and sent one to you, one to your client, and one to the underwriter. And so as we've become digital, our lives have become a lot easier, and it's a quicker system. It's definitely a lot more online. Everything is. So it went,
Okay.
tried to go paperless probably in 08, 09, people wanted to go paperless, but now it's 100%. I mean, very rarely do I print anything. I even have somebody on my staff used to print everything, and she used to have it hard. And now she doesn't do that anymore. Shout out to Terry Cagle. But yeah, so what we've seen is access to information too, just like real estate agents. It used to be that the FMLS was in a book. It truly was a book, and they delivered it to the agent's brokerage, and they had to go in there and look for properties that were listed for sale or drive around and look for signs. And now most of the people that look for houses find what they want and then say, hey, here's a house that I want, or here's a house that I want. It's just completely changed the whole business. The entire digital piece of it it's very interesting to see it from the very beginning to 2024. It's almost unrecognizable, and I love it. I love it.
I hear you. So I can compare that to being an English teacher, where the college education that I had was nothing to prepare me for the actual teaching that I did online, and just how digital things changed education in general. So I can relate to that. We actually have a presentation that we've done also on a previous LinkedIn Live event called The History of Closings in Georgia, where our lead educator, Sandi, who's been in her career for almost 40 years, has seen all those changes, and it's super interesting to hear, all the things that have changed. So you've seen a lot as well. Very cool. Okay, so how do you feel the changes have helped borrowers?
So I believe it's empowered them. Knowledge is power. It's not an exclusive group of people that hold all the information about these houses. So, what we do is pre-approve them for a certain range of houses and say, listen, you're good here, you can go up to here, but as you're looking online, and if you find something that you like, text it to me. And then Emily and I will go in there, we'll update the taxes for that property, all the things that change from property to property. People are looking in the middle of the night. We get text all the time, and we just update as they go. So, we consider ourselves loan advisors, that we're not loan officers. Loan officers take an application, turn it in, and good luck. We hope that works. And believe it or not, there's still a lot of those out there. But we consider it our responsibility to do all of the pre-work before they even find a house, pull the credit, review it, look at their income, explain to them the difference between down payment and cash to close, especially for our first-time home buyers, which are my favorite now because they're sophisticated enough to understand most of the principles. They just never been through it. So we answer all those questions up front. So it's not just hoping you're throwing a loan against the wall and then it goes through, because there's way too much invested up front to make it any chance whatsoever. Now, that doesn't mean things don't change every once in a while, but we're really, really good at what my mantra over here is bob and weave, because you have to bob and weave. And there are bankers out there that if one little turn happens, they decline you and they go on to the next person. We just don't view it that way. We view it as a consultation. And if something changes, we're the ones with the answers, and, hang with us and we'll get you there.
That's great. I love that attitude. I love that phrase, bob and weave.
Thank you.
So it sounds like a lot of what you do is I love the word empower the consumer, helping to educate the consumer or client. There's so much that the average person, if they've never bought a house before or had that kind of loan, they just don't know what they don't know. So it really helps to have someone who can guide and walk them through the whole process from start to finish. So super valuable.
And the second level of education is the parents who are our age that bought houses in the early 90s or early 2000s that say, well, that's not right. You don't have to do that. That's not how that goes. And I have been many a time. I'm like, have your dad call me. I'll
Yeah.
completely explain it. You want to do a conference call or y'all get the same place, I'll
Yeah.
explain it where everybody will understand, and
Yeah.
they do, they're just looking out for
Yeah.
their kids and they want the best experience. And unfortunately, loan
Sure.
originators don't have the best reputation of people that keep their clients' best
Right.
interest at heart. Yeah.
Right. I imagine there's a lot of just building that positive rapport, helping to build
Mhm.
some trust that they know that you know what you're talking about and not
Right.
just trying to, sell them a quick loan or
Exactly.
So, yeah. All right. Awesome. How do you determine which type of mortgage is going to be the best fit for a borrower?
So upfront, just like we do, there's a story for every loan. So no loan is ever the same either. I don't care if you're
Mhm.
W-2 and you want to put the same amount down in the same neighborhood. There's just differences for everybody. And so we interview them up front. Now that we're digital, I've moved from taking a hand application and having that
Yeah.
conversation with them immediately to saying, here, do me a favor, fill this out, put your general information in so I have it in front of me when I go through my standard, interview, just like we're doing, talk about, and I just say, what are you trying to do? Tell me what your plans are,
Yeah.
and to me, that's the most fun because then we get to solve the problem. And, they say, well, I own this house and I need to sell this house, or we're getting married and there's two separate houses. And I've almost done them all. So I could say, well, this is the way that I would do it, and then I give them a plan based on what they're trying to do. And I found in 23 years, you're either rate conscious, closing costs conscious, or monthly payment conscious. And most
Okay.
people fall in those three groups, and very rarely do they stretch one to the other, because people are different, and they know that when they buy a house that it's going to appreciate in value, as it has year over year, historically. So, if you're worried about the payment, then I say, okay, well, then you need to put this much down. And what I try to do is give people a table and go, okay, if you put this much down, this is your payment. This much down, this is your payment. And people are always shocked because they think if they put 10 or 20,000 extra down, it's going to save them $1,000 a month, and it saves them $24 a month or
Just a
something
little bit.
on
Yeah.
a 30-year fix. Yeah. So all that stuff up front, once again, empowers them, gives that information. So they're making choices based on themselves. I'm just helping them as a resource, so to speak. But I don't tell people what to do. But I will say that I tell people I would never give you advice that I wouldn't do myself. There's nothing that I would ever say is like, do this, if I couldn't see myself doing it, because I just don't think that's the authentic way.
Yeah, that's great to have that kind of, again, expert advice right at your fingertips. And just, again, what would you do if you were in my shoes? That's always
right. That's right.
Good feedback. And I appreciate your emphasis on getting the whole story behind a loan, and, who people are, the humanity behind the numbers, if you will, and then just letting the numbers speak for themselves and letting people have that choice to, make their best decision. That's great. Next question. How much do interest rates impact the sale of residential real estate?
Okay, so there's two things. There's psychological and financial, right?
Okay.
Fiscal. So psychologically, we've all been in the 3s and 4s for the past, 10 years, I guess, or whatever. But when you've been long enough, you've seen it go up and down. And people buy houses at milestones. So, when we get all caught up in the interest rate, I sold my house in Atlanta and I had a 2.125 rate on it. I mean, you're never going to see that again.
Yeah.
My husband's watching and he's reminding me, yes, you're never going to see that again. It's really hard for him as a banker to give that up, but we knew we wanted the lifestyle. We knew we were ready to move to that next chapter, and that rate now we're at 6.75, from a year and a half ago. But the fact is that the life is what we were looking for, not to remain in a house that didn't fit our lifestyle anymore. All our kids were gone and we could do whatever we wanted to do. So, that's the psychological part of it. The fiscal part of it is it does affect monthly payments. I mean, that is something, affordability or whatever you want to say. It may raise your monthly payments up higher than what you're comfortable with. What I try to do is go, okay, well, you've got this money from the sale of your house and you have 6 credit cards where you pay over $2,000 a month. Maybe we should pay all that off. And now you'll have that $2,000 extra. That'll buffer that payment shock is what we call it, that people are fine paying 18 to 22% on a $20,000 rolling
Yeah.
month to month.
Yeah.
It's just a psychological thing. So
make it make sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So I try to explain that. The other thing to remember too, bringing it back to our kids' ages, is that when we were growing up, there was a one-person household mentality, that one income was coming in.
Right.
I'm not saying it was that way for everybody, but in that general thing, the mortgage payment needed to be X amount of this gross income, because usually it was one major income earner. Now we've got these kids graduating and going out in the world, and they're both employed. Two people
Right.
get together, and they can afford $2,000 a month as rent individually. So you have to add it together. That's $4,000. So that moves them up into that price range. But the psychological part, especially for the parents, you're like, what do you mean your mortgage payment's going to be $4,500 a month? But really, you have to do a little, mathematical definition of what that is. Not that that's not a lot of money. It is.
Right.
But, we're also seeing kids, young adults coming in. Speaking of, my daughter is about to
I
join.
love that.
Hey,
Yeah.
Kennedy. She's my what I call a sophisticated first-time home buyer. She and her significant other bought a house together that they wouldn't have qualified. And we're finding that there's people that are not related in a relationship,
Partnership.
a romantic relationship, buying houses. So we're seeing 3 people get together, buy a 4-bedroom house. They split the mortgage by 3. They rent out the 4th bedroom, and then they're living large, at what they could not even do for the same price as that. So we're seeing that change, and that's just, norms, of society. They're changing, and it's fun to watch because, and as I said, Kennedy is my litmus test, because I always ask her, the one thing about millennials is they don't like to talk on the phone. And my whole sales life, that's when you sell. You sell on the phone, and then you meet in person. And they really don't want to do either, but I can promise you they don't want to talk to me on the phone. So
yeah. Wow, super interesting when you reflect on even just how the definition of family has changed and how that would affect the whole loan, application and approval process.
Right.
There's got to be some creative solutions for all of that. So that's good insight. Okay, next question. How can attorneys better work with lenders to facilitate a smooth closing?
Okay, so we discussed this earlier. One of my longtime closing attorneys is Marcus Rosin, and he has always been a great supporter of me and taking very good care of my clients. But, I always kid around with him. Anybody can close a loan. I mean, sit at a table. I can do that. I've done it long enough. I know exactly every form, what they say.
Yep.
The strength of a closing attorney's relationship is the back office. It's the people that take the title order and respond and say, we've got it and no problem. And they get it back to us in a timely manner, or they say, hey, something's wrong, raise the flag and go, we saw this, there's a lien here. And it get all that conversation and communication that comes from a title company or a closing attorney is very important during the process. I always say time and money is on our side. If we have time to fix the problem, that's great. But if you tell us something 3 days before closing that it's going to, delay the closing, or we got to go back and get an attorney involved or whatever, to me, that the back office makes or breaks the closing experience for me. That's why I love what y'all do, because really there's not a ton of organized training when it comes to that. So, and the customer service part of it is really, really important. And to use, I will not name one, but there was in our building at one point, there was a closing attorney that we used. It was downstairs, and the seasoned people left, and he hired a bunch of unexperienced people that absolutely didn't know what was going on, and things were blowing up. And I mean, he was excellent. And I told him, I said, we're not going to be able to send you any more loans. I mean, you've got to invest in your people in the back office and give them the training and tell them why it's important, and explain the whole process, why we're calling, back then, the closing disclosures, trying to figure out how we were going to do all the TRID changes. I mean, it's just, to me, the closing experience really, this tone is set by the people in the back office.
Yeah, I agree. And I really appreciate you sharing that. That is a good testimony of the value of clear communication, having well-trained staff, that customer service is so important, and that can really differentiate, who gets your business, at
That's
the end
right.
of the day. So good reminder. Oh, thank you. What do you see as the biggest challenges in your industry?
The industry itself changes so quickly. It is unbelievable. One rule that may have been in existence 6 months ago, it changes. The TRID, all of the TRID that came down the road and they rolled it out because of the housing industry, but they've messed up some of that stuff. It's like Juneteenth was yesterday. They came out 2 days before the first Juneteenth and said Friday is going to be the first federal holiday, and no loan could close that day. I mean,
Yeah.
like those kind of decisions made it at the top. You have to think, and in the spirit of it, I thought it was a great thing, but all of a sudden, if people are closing on their houses, luckily we didn't have that many. We had refinances and stuff that if you're supposed to close that day and it's supposed,
And move.
it's done till next
Yeah.
week or whatever. So we're just seeing those kind of changes. It's a big, I always kid around that the government knows better how to do a loan than the people in the mortgage business, but I'm seeing it settle out a little bit more, a little more common sense is going on. There's stuff I would change, but the closing disclosure helped us. Even though it's really hard, there's no last second running around in circles on closing day. I mean, if it's not done 3 days before, now you may run around the day before, 3 days before, but that buffer really does help our industry time it out a little bit better. So, yeah.
That's great. I'm reminded again of your quote, bob and weave.
Bob and weave.
Gotta be ready to go with the flow. You never know what's going to come up or slow things down or change it altogether. Yeah, good. So in contrast to that, what are some of the biggest rewards?
So I'm sorry, what or what?
What are some of the biggest rewards that you have experienced in the industry?
Well, like I said before, just being a part of it. To me, I always say there's two things that have to happen. I have to make people happy and I have to make money. And in my industry, I can do both. And they have to happen together. I've worked places where I closed a bunch of loans and wasn't in charge of how they closed, and the people weren't happy, and they called me all the time, telling me how unhappy they were. So I was making money, but they were unhappy, and that was not good for me. So in the brokering world that I work in, I don't have to worry about checking accounts or savings accounts or go to meetings that are completely useless to the mortgage industry, which happened to me a lot when I worked at the banks after the recession. But the rewarding part is being that part. And now I'm having people from 15, 20 years ago call me and they said, hey, do you remember? You may not remember me. And of course, we talked about this already. I go, I remember everybody. And once you tell me one thing, I remember your whole story. I said, but they call me and say, my son's trying to buy a house. Can you help him? He's an idiot. Will you talk to him? Every first home buyer, everybody buys one house, their first house. And so to me, that's really rewarding, is to see these little kids. I just closed one. He was born in our neighborhood. He went to school. He's a doctor. He moved to Pensacola, and I got to be a part of every stage of his life. I mean, that's really very lucky for me. So I really, really enjoy. That's the most rewarding part. And having a team of people that share how I feel about it. I mean, you can tell real quickly who cares about their clients and who doesn't.
Yeah. So again, it's that human people connection that really is the greatest reward. I love that, helping people. Okay, any tips for new mortgage brokers?
You won't know until you know. Just like you said, you don't know what you don't know until you know that you don't know. I still learn things every day.
Yeah,
you cannot be one of those people. My sister, I don't know if Maria's on here or not. She worked with me when I was a broker. I had my own company, and she called me one day. She goes, I just can't do it. I go to bed at night. There's too many variables. I can't, it's not a first sure thing until it is. And there's some people that, if that's your mindset, this is not the industry for you on the broker side, on the originator side, because you can study, you can know what you're doing, but one little thing that changes may change everything. So that bob and weave, there's people's personalities that just annihilates them and they shut down, So that's what I would give them the advice to, number one, what you learn taking the test, nobody uses. Get on a team of people who care about you and want to answer your questions and want to be a part, who want to see you succeed, and be ready to make a lot of mistakes. so you have a good people around you, and then stop and look at things from the perspective of the buyer borrowers, that you have to understand, the only time you know what it feels like is when you go through it yourself. So if you've never bought a house yourself, you won't know what it feels like when people go, well, what do you mean you need another pay stub? That kind of thing. So I think it's a great industry. I think it's very flexible. You get to help people. You can make money. It's a tough road out there right now for new people. And, it's just, you need to, it's a hard work, but it does pay off.
And be willing to put in the work.
That's it.
A couple of phrases that we've used in our training, especially when we are working with new attorneys, is that you don't want to hire an employee, you want to hire a teammate. So again, there's that real team spirit of working together towards the end goal. And then we also say to hire character, but train skill, right? It's more about who you want to work with, and then the skills can come down the road with some mentoring and experience and training. So
that's right.
Good to keep in mind. So I'm throwing in a bonus question here.
Oh, great.
Do you see AI affecting the future of the industry?
So I'm new to AI. ChatGPT is about as new as I am for that. It is amazing. I know people my age and older are very afraid of it. I heard somebody refer to it as a search engine, times 1,000, that it just searches for more information more quickly than anything could ever. I mean, computers are fast. This is faster. I think if people are adopting it already, I use it. I'm like, put together a social media post that appeals to agents who deal with 24 to 39-year-olds in Atlanta or Texas or wherever. You can put all those in the prompts and it finds it. So I'm a fact finder. That makes me happier than you ever know. I mean, if you ask me a question, I'm better than the FBI. I will be able to find it so that you give me something that's faster, that, and it's scary, but using it as a tool to do your marketing or to do your research, to understand things better. I think it's a fantastic thing. And I shout out to Kathy. I don't think Kathy's on the call, but Kathy she is one who does a CE course on it for real estate agents. And we're having 40, 50 people. We have waiting lists for these classes because it's such a timely thing. So if you go from books into the realtor brokerage where you used to have to page through, there's people that did that, and now you have this thing on your phone that you can put a couple of questions into it and it gives you all this information. It's just it's almost unbelievable. So I think it's here to stay. It's going to replace people. My dad always said the man who sold the most ice blocks the year before the freezer was made was the most successful. So you better bob and weave from there to there if you want to stay, or you find yourself something else to do. So you can try, but people didn't like telephones or TVs or anything else when those came out. So
so you got to make peace with it. That's true. I was going to say, not only can they just spit out that information and the facts so quickly, it can do it in a poem or in Shakespeare, or it can be amazingly creative. Haiku, exactly. Crazy. Again, that's the English teacher in us coming out. So, last question, Sonja. What is the most important thing you have learned in your career?
That people are driven by different things, and I have my little speeches I give, and then I say, this is my speech, but you may not think that, tell me how you feel about something. And I call it the sleep factor. I can say, all right, you got this much money. I know you want to put it all down, but you really need to go in here and put this and pay this off and put less down and pay mortgage insurance for a year. Financially, fiscally, that makes sense on paper. But if in your head, you really feel like you want to put that much money down and you do what I say, and then you go to your new house and you lay down to sleep and you can't sleep at night because you didn't do what was authentically correct for you to do, no matter if it made more sense to me than anybody, it truly comes down to every person's different. Every person has different needs at different times in your life. You have different stuff. I wanted a house on a cul-de-sac with a swim and tennis for my kids. Well, that's not what I need anymore. That's not,
Yeah.
they're doing their own thing. So what I've learned the most is that, and that the more you give, the more you get back, and people, I mean, I've had women cry on the phones. I mean, we wear all those hats and stuff, but it's an impact that I do not take for granted that I can be involved with that. And, and sometimes it doesn't go well, but most of the time it does. And,
Yep.
that's just the way it goes. So
That's great. Keeping your focus on those priorities and just not giving up, keep moving forward and treating each person as their own individual needs at that age and stage of their life are good life lessons to keep in mind. So thank you for sharing that.
you're welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sonja. This has just been a treat to get some of your insight into the industry and just to chat with you a little bit. I am just going to offer to our participants, if you're here in the chat box, if there's anything you want to ask or say, now's a good time. Is there any question we can address before we wrap things up?
Thank you for showing up, everybody.
Yes,
I appreciate that.
thank you. And I'll keep an eye on the chat box for a minute in case something comes through, but just a reminder in case you came in late, you can follow us on all the various social media channels. Again, Real Estate Closing Path. And again, a reminder of the different training and workshops that we do provide. All of these are offered virtually monthly. And then we can also customize any experience or lunch and learn for your office. And coming up next month, we'll be featuring some marketing tips for title agents by our very own Pierre Boulogne-Glavin. That'll be Thursday, July 25th, 11 a.m. And again, that's another LinkedIn Live event. Kathy says, thank you. Enjoyed your presentation. Yeah,
My pleasure, Kathy. Thanks for coming.
Yep, that's it. Thanks. We'll hope you will join us again in the future. And again, thank you, Sonja.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Take care. Bye-bye.